Hi, this is Jill from the Northwoods. Last week we talked about how ADHD affects people and affected me. And when I noticed something was really wrong, something had to get fixed, I was starting to have struggles. And today we're going to talk about what I actually did to go through and make some of these struggles better in my life. And it produces a challenge, I think, for everyone who has it. Like I said, I also believe to an extent, and this is something new for me, I realize there's probably a little bit of autism in there too. But I don't think I'm very high on either scale. But I was high enough on ADHD that it caused problems in my life, that it was starting to affect my school. And I knew that my only hope was to get through school, get to college, to get out of where I was at. Like I said, grew up very poor. My dad was an alcoholic. We were on a military base, and I was way up in the Northwoods without a lot of resources. Life was pretty chaotic for me then. I started trying to come up with solutions to figure out what it is I can do with this ADHD and do better in school. And so the first thing I did is I tried to understand what was going on. I started listing down what I thought was wrong. And some things I got right and some things I got wrong. But like I said, I mentioned the things I was noticing. I was fidgety. I couldn't pay attention. I would get lost in time where I would do something and then suddenly it would be 6 hours later. And I'm like, what just happened? I have homework I had to do. I made mistakes on my homework assignments. Like I wouldn't do every detail to the last detail of it. If you had a homework assignment and they said, well, write on every other line, I totally missed those things. And so I got a lot of bad grades just because I wasn't doing everything that I was supposed to be doing. And I know kids are kids. This was a little bit more than I saw that was going around with other people near me. So I knew something was bigger with me. I would forget to do things. I would procrastinate till the last minute. And then I was working so hard to catch up and to do better that I'd start burning out because I was trying to do everything perfectly. Again, I was trying to help my mom. And so I not only did all my schoolwork and tried to get through school, but I was trying to help her too. She was kind of in a rough situation with my dad being an alcoholic. She's a city girl. The Northwoods was not the place for her. She hated it. And so I did what I could to help her. But then I was just burning out because I was burning all my candles on all ends. And then I just was really disorganized. My parents were both hoarders. The house was a mess. I was a mess. And just trying to keep things straight was a big struggle with me. I had projects that were unfinished. I would normally get my school things done to some extent, but then I would be not able to do the things I wanted to do, the things I was working on in the house or projects that I was trying to get done. And I just didn't, like I said, really get anywhere. I started noticing in grade school, and then I started learning more and more about it in high school. But even when I got to college, I got called lazy by someone, disengaged. I was having problems with sleeping. And so my friend says, well, you're really lazy and you sleep all the time, which was hilarious because I was not a lazy person. I was doing something at every minute of every day. It might not have been the right thing to do. And I rarely slept. I got probably about 3-4 hours of sleep every night back in those times. Starting out is first of all reminding myself I can't save my mom. I can help. I can help save my mom and I can do things for her. But I'm just a little kid. You know, I can do as much as I can do. I'm just human. And I'm not some kind of a superhero. And so I did the best I could. I just reminded myself of that. And I would reflect on some of the mistakes I was making and I would try to correct them. Like if my teacher says, well, you were supposed to write it on every other line, or you were supposed to only turn in 3 pages and you turned in 6 pages. Yeah, believe it or not, I usually turned in too much homework and I got in trouble for that as well. And then I started going through some different processes in order to try to make my life better even back then, where I got up in the morning and I cleared off the space in my very messy life. This was my bulletin board of truth. I don't know what I called it. Something like that. It was like something like the bulletin board of truth. And I wrote on little pieces of paper the things I had to get done that day and then pinned them up. This was the place where all the phone numbers were. This was the place where my schedules, important things I had to be at were. And then if I had an important project at school, those were pinned there too. And then I would just pull them off as I got them done. But it was like the one place of calm in a area of mess and disaster. And then I would, at the end of the day, start reflecting on what would I do tomorrow? How was I going to tackle tomorrow? Well, I have to go to school. That school comes early. And then when I get home, I'd sort of think about it and just reflect and plan on my day. The other thing I started doing, and this is where all of my podcasts come from, I have the Start with Small Steps podcast, is I started breaking things down into smaller steps. I realized I would get overwhelmed if I would just see something like write a paper on the sinking of the Lusitania. I remember I had a paper I had to write on Rutherford B. Hayes and Guatemala, not in the same paper. Boy, I mean, I had to do a lot of things, but I could break it down. I need to get to the library and get some books. I need to make an outline of what my paper is going to look like based on the information I read in those books. And I could break things down into smaller techniques. And the other part of it too is that I would try to get up and move around. If I was finding myself getting lost, my attention, my focus was going away, I would get up and do something else. I do that to this day. If I'm at work and I've been doing something for a very long time and suddenly my attention is waning, I get up and just do something else. I go look out at my backyard, which has trees and nature and birds in it. I go work on maybe, throwing a load of laundry in or something. I just to get away from my desk for a few minutes so my brain can clear. Still do that to this day. I realized that I got really distracted by things. So that is at the point when I was a kid, I decluttered my room. I noticed that if something was in my room that would grab my attention, I could take a long time to get it back. So I started organizing. I started putting things away. I had artwork that was there so that my room would be interesting to me and that I would, I guess, be stimulated in my brain. But I just took away anything that I could get wrapped up into. Like if I had a Rubik's Cube over there, well, I might go stand up, pick it up, and start playing with it. Nope, that had to go in a drawer. So I started minimizing some of my distractions. And I started down my path of learning to say no. If a friend wanted me to help with a project and I just had too many things going on, I started to learn how much I could handle and how much I just couldn't handle, and started limiting how many things I said yes to. I also noticed that I was very late for appointments all the time. And as I started getting into more like high school and college, I started doing things like putting clocks and calendars everywhere. So I could always be faced with the time it is, what date it is. I wrote things on calendars. And even when I got a job that was very hard, I mentioned that I got a job because I bought this house, and I didn't think I could afford it. I ended up getting a better job at a company that was so drastically difficult that people got fired from it all the time. When the Franklin planners came out, I was all over it and bought myself one of those Franklin planners. And everything that became like the clean space, right? Everything went in there. Every appointment, every task, everything I had to do. I am not a paper and pen kind of person. I just am not. I can't read my own handwriting, but I had to. I had to do something in order to keep track of the things I had to get done, the deadlines, the things I promised, and the things that my boss said were important and that I must do. So I started doing that. Later, we're going to talk about the technology options, because once tech got in there, things got a lot better for me. The other part is I started being able to ask people, repeating back to them what I heard. Okay, so what I'm hearing from you, Mr. Boss, at that time it was a dude, you want me to get this server up and running. You need it by November 1st. It has to have, and I would repeat back to him because I knew it was actually less important for me to repeat back to it. But because I had to be prepared to report back to him, I knew that I would pay attention, I would hear the details, and then I would write everything down in my little Franklin planner. The other point of it too is as I got older and started looking at things, I started color coding Post-it notes. And so my clean space, my Franklin planner had a lot of notes in it. They were all color coded by how urgent they were. So I could look at a glance that server project was on a reddish Post-it note. That's going to be the most urgent thing. The thing that was in green, that was something that I could probably delay if I needed to do that. The other part of it too is that when I got older as well, I started learning more emotional, I guess, maturity, is that if I felt overwhelmed, if I felt like snapping at someone, I would just take time. Like, just give it a day. If you're still mad in a day, you can talk to them again. And I was able to put off things so that I would lose some of that impulsive urge to respond or snap back at people. And that became an important thing for me then, too. Later on, too, I started using a little bit like the Pomodoro technique. And the Pomodoro technique Pomodoro is an Italian word for tomato, and they used to have these tomato timers. And the idea was that if you had to do something that was very difficult, you could set a timer for 10 minutes. I am going to do this for 10 minutes, and then I'm going to take a small 5-minute break and do something else. This prevented me from getting too overwhelmed with projects. It prevented me from getting too buried into time blindness. And I would do it for good things too. So if I was going to play a video game, I would literally set a timer and say, you can only play for these 20 minutes, and then you have to put your game away, or you have to put this other thing away. So the older I got, the better I got for preparing for these daily rituals, these daily planning situations, and better at using tools so that I can plan my day. And I even got better at breaking things into small steps. I could see the more small steps involved in all of that. This isn't cured for me. Some things are cured for me, and I'll talk a little bit about that next. But exercising, getting good sleep, I realized that the more tired I was, and since I had insomnia and I was only getting 3 or 4 hours of sleep, I had to start focusing on getting better sleep. And so through that was exercising, eating better, getting less sugar. That helped with this, and just trying to get healthy, I guess, is part of it. Me going out into nature also helps my brain quite a bit, and so I got into hiking, spending time outside, looking at trees and going for walks outside in nature was also very important to me. One thing I learned, like I said, when I was in college, and the college time was a big breakthrough for me because I was a psych major and I was taking a class. They did a whole segment on not what they were calling ADHD at that moment, but it was ADD. And they showed brains, and they said, this is a normal person's brain in an MRI. Most people can go into a quiet situation like an MRI for a few minutes and just be fine. But this is a person with ADHD inside the MRI, and their brain was nothing. They weren't getting stimulus. So then I realized through this class, and after talking to the professor for a while, oh, so this is a brain that's starving to death. This isn't a brain that is overwhelmed with details. I mean, it is, but the reason it's doing this, it's thinking all the time, the brain is like a river, is because it's actually starving. And so it's overdoing stimulus inside the brain because it's not getting enough from the outside world. So I started self-medicating with caffeine. When I took caffeine, I slept better. My brain functioned better. I was able to calm down a little bit. Then I started seeing people around me getting put on medication in college for ADD, and it was mostly stimulants. And I thought, yep, that's what it is. I can self-treat this with caffeine and hopefully take enough of it so that it helps my brain work better. And it did work for a while. But the other part of it, too, is I realized that I am understimulated. And so I always like to have rooms with pictures everywhere, with things everywhere, knickknacks and stuff like that. Not things I can get engrossed in, and not things that will lead my attention away, but instead things that would just entertain my brain a little bit and keep it more active. Even as I go now, I have a TV where I work. I have nature videos sometimes playing where it's silent, the person doesn't speak. It's just hiking. It's just someone going hiking. And sometimes I watch some of those things, or those virtual fireplaces or something like that. Just having something that I can't get too engrossed in, but keep my brain going, helps me quite a bit. And then when it came to impulsive shopping and other things, I started having a wait time, that if I wanted to buy something, I had to wait. I put it in like a shopping cart in modern internet shopping terms, or I put it on a list, put the price down, and write down why I wanted to do it. And I had to at least wait. The more expensive it was, the more I had to wait. And I found that sometimes I would have this huge urge to buy something. And then if I just waited a day or two, that urge went away and I never bought that thing. But I also did that with other things that I would find myself being impulsive with. So I started changing impulsivity by planning what I'm going to buy, what I'm going to do, and not get wrapped up in just the spur of the moment. I didn't like planning, and I never liked planning because I sort of felt like I'm a free spirit, but it made all the difference and it helped me do the things I was supposed to do. And when it came to in for things like exercise and things that I should do for myself that I didn't want to do for myself, I wrote down the reasons why. Eventually, Simon Sinek came up with a book talking about the 5 whys. Why do you want to exercise? Because you don't want to be sick. You don't want to get injured. You don't want to have a bad life. And so I started writing down whys in my little Franklin planner so I would remember not just that I needed to exercise, but why I needed to exercise. But then we came out to the technology age, and tech was huge for me. That is why I do tech now. I have been on podcasts for Mac technology primarily because tech fixed me. It wasn't just something that was cool. It wasn't just something that I could play with because I like technology, and I do. It actually was something that fixed me as part of this whole ADHD autism thing. The first breakthrough for me when it came to tech was when the first smartphone came out. I think it was a Windows Phone 1. And I was working at this very hard company, like I said, that fired people left and right. By the way, I worked there for 9 years, and I live in a town that if you just tell people in the town, oh, I worked at that company for 9 years, you can almost instantly get hired anywhere because most people don't last 2 years. And for the fact that I lasted 9, and then eventually left to find a different job because it was also taking 100 hours of my life away. It's a statement. But what I did is they came out with smartphones. I bought a smartphone when they said there was about 100,000 Americans who had smartphones. And I knew it. I knew this is the thing I needed to do. I also had that same realization when iPads came out, by the way. But suddenly I had apps, to-do apps, journaling apps. I could write everything down. I could schedule calendars and say, hey, Jill, don't forget to pay your credit card bill on this date, and put reminders in. Oh my gosh, my whole life got better with that. So in some ways, I joked because I say I'm not a better human being. Technology just got better. What I do now is I use Todoist. Todoist has a free level, and so you can write to-do notes. But there's also a paid level. And the thing that gets me about Todoist is you can write multiple reminders for things so that everything comes in. I use Fantastical, and it too also has multiple reminders. So I can set one reminder for when I have to go to the gym. I have to go upstairs and change clothes. Now I have to get in my car and go pick up my friend. Now the third reminder is 5 minutes and I need to be at my gym so that I have my appointment with my trainer done. I could have every level of notification I ever needed to get things done. I also started doing something that was called time blocking. And time blocking is a calendar that I have on Fantastical, but it's more like a guidebook. It's more like if I had the perfect week, the magic week, I waved the magic wand and had the perfect week, this is what my week would look like. I would get up in the morning and I would eat. Then I would exercise for a small bit, whether I'm going to see my trainer or I'm going to go to the gym or work out in my gym in my house. This is what I'm planning on doing. Then I'm going to go work because I work for a company in a different time zone. I have time in the morning. I'm going to work, do all this during the day. Now I'm done with work. I'm going to work on my podcasts. I'm going to work on the YouTube channel. I have a schedule of what I'm going to do when it comes to the YouTube channel, when it comes to the podcast. And I plan out my days between Todoist and Fantastical. I would love to tell you that I tried to use the next tool to replace Todoist and Fantastical, and I just couldn't. Both those two apps are so amazing that I was able to get my whole life together. And when I use them, and I have subscriptions for both of them, it saved my bacon. My life goes so much better with those two things. But the last area that I do is I use an app called Notion. And Notion is sort of this digital notebook, digital organizer of information. And I did a whole presentation at a conference last year about it. But I can save all my articles that I want to read later in Notion. I can save all the articles I hope to do a podcast on and save it for later. But I can also create schedules. I can create what they call Kanban boards. And let me tell you an example of what I do with that. So I have 4 podcasts, and I have this YouTube channel and Small Steps with God YouTube channel. I'm doing 10 digital things every week. So each of those things belong to a category, which is which podcast or YouTube channel they're for. They each have a status. I have to write it. I have to record what I'm going to say. I'm recording this one right now. And then I have to edit it, publish it, and put it out on the internet. So they each have statuses that can move along. So I can keep track of all those tasks, not so much in the same way of Todoist, but instead I can keep track of what I need to do next. So last night, I looked to see what could I record audio only. Okay, there's my list of all the things I need to record audio for. Tonight, I'm going to have a list of all the videos I need to edit. I use this to plan out this whole podcast YouTube thing. But I also do it for tasks. I do it for moods. It's like a journal for me as well. I keep track of all my articles. It's so much more. Notion takes a little bit of knowledge to set it up correctly, or you can buy templates that you can use if you wish to use it. But these are for things that aren't quite so deadline based, like Todoist and Fantastical. This is more what they call second brain kind of stuff. My whole life are in those apps. There's other things out there too, but those are the 3 digital options I picked. Then I do a lot of setting timers. Like I said, notification, multiple reminders. Now I have clocks and calendars still around this house everywhere, even though I have them on my phone and I have them on my iPad and I have them on my computer. But I still have them because, again, I want to always know what time it is because I get so lost when it comes to time. The other thing is I went paperless because paper is just clutter. And if I put something in a file cabinet, and I have a whole file cabinet downstairs in the basement, I'll never look at it again. I might as well go through and burn everything in that file cabinet, which I might do coming up in camping season. I will never look at it. I'm never going to look at it. So I went paperless where I could categorize and tag and organize things so that I can pull them back up by searches when I want to do them. So that helped me in keeping organized with details. I also digitized my space when it comes to work. I use Todoist for my work projects. That helps me a lot. I had to come up with a place that I could put all tasks. And honestly, office task management is pretty terrible. Todoist is so much more sophisticated that I could never use just office tasks. So I got all my work tasks in there too, deadlines, notes, everything. If someone tells me to do something, I write it down in there. I also make sure that the only things on my work desktop and my home desktop are things that I'm working on right now. The only things on my desktop, on my computer here, are these podcasts and videos that I'm going to have to edit. That's it. And then the other part was noise management. Noise disrupts me all the time. So I had to keep things quiet. I realized I can't listen to music when I'm working because it distracts me too much. So I started either listening to classical music or nature sounds. Or like I said, I'll just put a link to his show notes in there, Herman Hoke. And he's on YouTube and he just goes hiking. He doesn't say a word. One time he said one word and that's the only time. But it's just something that sounds natural, right? And so I found the things that really calm me down and keep my brain in place. And like I said, as soon as I play music, I get lost in it and I can't focus anymore. And for a while, I even used the app Headspace. I don't use it anymore. I think it's a little bit expensive for what it is or how much I need to use it, but they have practice on focus. And I started to learn some tools and techniques for myself on how to stay focused for longer periods of time. And that helped quite a bit. The other thing, too, is anything that if you have impulsive problems, there are lock boxes where you have to punch in codes and then you say how long this thing has to be locked. People use it for cookies, that I have a cookie and I'm not allowed to have them more than once every 24 hours. So you keep things locked away. I have a safe, all my credit cards, except for one, go into the safe, and I'm just not going to go impulsively shopping for it. I found, too, with all my timers and everything else, that having an Apple Watch has been invaluable to me because I can put my cell phone away. Not even near me. All the little games, all the little iPad games, they're all gone. They're all over there. My watch has all my timers, has all my notifications, and is much less distracting for someone who has ADHD than a full-blown phone or iPad or tablet or anything like that. So that kind of keeps me on track. Then the last part of this is I started just learning about what ADHD is to me, and I started learning how to use it as a strength. So when I am in a hyper-focused mode, I get things done that require hyper-focus. I'm not a very good writer, and so when I'm feeling hyper-focused, I go do writing things because I do a better job of it. When I'm feeling distracted and a little bit jumpy, I work on projects like answering emails and things that are a little bit more short-term projects on there. So I learned my own patterns and figured out how I can work with those patterns in order to make them work for me, particularly with work. Like I said, work is the number one thing that scares me. If I screw up on my podcast, nobody fires me. I don't lose my house. And whenever I screw up at work, it really gets to me because that job is what keeps me in this house. It keeps me on track for retirement. And so, yes, most of my energies go into me trying to figure out how to work better. But by learning how to work better, I'm learning how to podcast better. I'm learning how to pay my bills better. I'm learning how to do everything better. Then other places where I've been able to succeed is I have friends who are better at some things than I am. Can they help me, or can I delegate those tasks to them? I work on tasks when it comes to my natural abilities. So for example, I'm much more extroverted later in the day. So I'm recording this at a later time as I had some time to wind up a little bit, get a little bit more energized. But this morning, I was editing podcasts because it's a little bit more quiet. It's a good sort of wake up activity to do when you're just trying to get awake and everything else like that. Here's the other thing is I figured out, and I mentioned it last time, that I won't do things for myself, but I will do things for other people all the time. And so I learned that if I can get accountability, if I can get oversight, if I can tie my project in with somebody else, I need to lose weight because I'm going to go hiking with my friend. And if I'm terrible at it, I won't do a very good job. If I can tie it into other people, then I'm able to get those goals done much better. And then the other part that comes into some of this is the impulsivity issues went away when I was able to put things in lists and digital places, shopping carts. Some of my bill paying problems, because I would have money, but I would just forget to pay my bills because I'd have to go find a stamp, and there was this paper, and now it's sitting in this stack of paper, and now I can't figure out what bills I have and which bills I don't have. Now it's all scheduled. So I do as much scheduling as I can to have things happen automatically. My bills are scheduled. My certain actions are scheduled. And so I follow those because you can do them ahead of time in most apps when you have a task to do ahead of time. So I try to get them all done that way. So it's not perfect. I think what you have to do is figure out how does ADHD and autism affect you? Even just writing them down, then come up with small steps that will let you use the right tools, the right methods, lifestyle adjustments, and start combating them one by one. As you might have seen, this is me combating ADHD and doing it successfully over the course of many decades, right? I have done this for a long time, and it's going to take time, and you have to break things into small steps. You have to make them so that you can achieve it and not change too much all the time. When I was in grade school and they didn't call it ADHD, I did what I could to make school work for me. When I got into college and I understood a little bit what this was, I was able to do a little bit more to combat this. And now, the technology age and being a computer nerd and someone who works in computers, I suddenly understood a lot better what I could do in order to fix these things. You're just going to have to be kind with yourself and go through some of these things more slowly. Now, you might have noticed in the YouTube channel in particular that I have, I do something I call Small Steps with Mounjaro. I started in June taking Mounjaro, which is against diabetes. It helps with sleep apnea. It pretty much helps with everything, but primarily it also helps with weight loss. I started taking that, and interestingly enough, it also affects ADHD. What it does for me is it's not so much people in ADHD call it executive function disorder. And that means how organized, do you know what you're supposed to do next? Do you know what you should be doing next? When should you get them done? When are your deadlines and all that? It doesn't seem to help with that very much. What it does help with is impulsivity control. It helps with the river. I used to have a river of thoughts flowing in my mind all the time. That went away when I started taking Mounjaro. It is completely gone. You can look at the other channel to see some of those things. I can focus like I have never been able to focus in my entire life. And in fact, I got so good at focusing on this drug that I ended up starting to being late with things because I was so focused on getting this document for work written or so focused on getting this thing, mostly for work, done that suddenly I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to pick up my friend and we're supposed to go to the gym. I now have the ability to focus so much better than I used to be able to do. It's been amazing for me. And like I said, the voices in my head that were always like streaming around as a river, for the most part, gone. So I still have to make sure I keep on top of my organizational systems, keep on top of all my apps that I have filled out. But when it comes to some of the symptoms of ADHD, I have found a real cure for them in taking Mounjaro or one of these GLP drugs. So you're going to have to look at for you. I'm not a doctor. I'm not telling you what to do when it comes to medicine or anything else like that. Again, I don't feel like I was severely deep into ADHD or autism, but I was enough where it affected my life. And these are the things that I did to improve my life. And now things are pretty darn great. I can get things done, which I always struggled with my entire life. Like I said, I wasn't lazy. I was just struggling all the time. And now I can focus to the point where I can get these things done. I can organize and I can remember to get details. And I don't know, it's just been an amazing route for me. In grade school, eventually, I was so far advanced, they put me into high school in grade school because they didn't know what to do with me. And then when I got to high school, my high school poo-pooed my old school and says, oh, well, we're a much better school than your last school. And they made me take high school all over again. And then when my dad marched into the school and got very angry with them for doing it, they sent me to a local college and let me take college classes when I was in high school because I could do it. I was taking calculus from a local college while I was in high school. So it worked. And now, like I said, I survived for 9 years at that very, very hard job. I'm happy in a job now, and I want to help people, and I want to do a great job every day. So this has been a success story for me when I think it could have gone another way for me. I hope this helps you. So my challenge to you is if you're trying to look at your own ADHD/autism or someone else's, write down how this negatively affects them, how it positively affects them, and start breaking down into small steps. What can you do to tackle these individual issues? I worry that in this day and age, we just say, oh, well, I just have ADHD. I guess I'm just not going to go anywhere in my life. Instead of taking on those things, instead of challenging ourselves to fight each of these individual challenges, because every one of them, you're not too far with ADHD. And if you are, go talk to a doctor, get some help. But if this is something that you can deal with on your own, deal with it. Don't just put yourself into some sort of labeled category and say, oh, well, I just have ADHD. That's just the way it is. No, go after this. You have the ability to fight this off. And when you do, your life is going to get so much better. All right, everyone, thanks so much. I appreciate you listening and watching this video. Please remember that you can always email me at jill@startwithsmallsteps.com. I'd love to hear about your experiences with this, or please comment in this channel right here. I would love to hear how things are for you. Are there struggles that you're having? Maybe I could think of some ways that you could go through and take small steps to overcome them. Like I said, not a doctor, but I have a lot of practical experience of doing this myself for me, and maybe I have some ideas for you. Thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe and tell a friend. We're going to talk about other topics related to this, but not related to this. Mostly, this whole channel is about taking small steps to make your life better. Have a good day.